On behalf of the first of its kind, Woodstock School's Artist Affinity Group, I'm pleased to welcome you and would like to convey our collective excitement of all of us here, being here together. It is my pleasure to share with you briefly about the recently formed Woodstock School Artist Affinity Group. So I'm just going to share briefly about what the group is about, what some of our hopes are, what we are planning to do. And soon after that, we'll start our presentations. A few months back, the visual art session that took place at the Parker Hall Reunion provided the opportunity and encouragement for a few participating Woodstock alumni artists to explore and create more opportunities for other artists from our community to get together. This core group that represents artists from different class years, decades, and regions collectively set up the Woodstock School Artist Affinity Group with the intent to create a space for all to be able to share art, collaborate, and network with each other. The Woodstock School Artist Affinity Group, which we have created the acronym WSAG. Some are calling it SAG, and we have also thought of the icon as a bowl of SAG, will represent the Woodstock alumni and friends working in multiple creative disciplines and those interested in the arts and creative fields. The group aims to provide learning opportunities, networking, support for alumni and current students in the arts, and provide activities that enrich the members' practice or lives. Some of the core goals for the group are monthly Zoom meetings for people to interact, connect, and showcase their work. We are hoping to have artist talks and critiques and network with other art practitioners across disciplines. We hope for this platform to encourage collaborations on projects and finally, and very importantly, also support art and artists at the school, the art program at Woodstock. So far, we have listed out about 60 plus alumni who are in one way or the other creatively engaged. I'm sure this list is bound to grow. In this first affinity, it is the first affinity group that Woodstock has, and thanks to the alumni office and the larger administration for allowing this to happen. And of course, this began a few months back. So we hope that this group will encourage more affinity groups to come together in the future. We have some great ideas, and we want to build on this with ideas from all of you. We are excited at the possibility of get-togethers in Missouri, film screenings, artist meets, exhibitions, a website, etc. The movement also goes to show the influence of Woodstock in the art and culture space, something that we can certainly celebrate. We encourage all of you, artists and friends from our community, and anyone who is interested in the arts to join us as we are in the beginning stages of forming this affinity group. So with that, today we have listed 7 speakers who will be sharing about their practices and sharing about how Woodstock shaped their lives and careers. The speakers today is a representation of the diversity we seek in this group. The speakers range from filmmakers to painters, illustrators, practicing music and performative arts. Each speaker will share for about 5 to 7 minutes. So the question answers session we'll have towards the end. So what you could do is, if you have a question you want to ask a particular presenter, you can share that question referring to the name in the chat box, and we'll have a question and discussion towards the end. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite our first speaker for today, Sonam Yeshi, she's based in Dharamsala and from the class of 2006. Over to you, Sonam.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Sonam Yeshi, and I'm from the... Hi, everyone. So I'm from the class of 2000, and after I graduated from Woodstock, I went on to study at Parsons School of Design in New York. And after graduating from there, I came back to Dharamsala, India, to work at the India Institute. And for those of you who went on Activity Week to Dharamsala back in Woodstock might have visited Nubulunga Institute. It was actually founded by my parents under a trust, and it works towards preserving Tibetan culture and is a great place for artisans to thrive. And we work on self-sustainment through creating products for the contemporary market. And so it was a perfect place for me to start working and applying my skills that I had learned there. So it felt natural to work there, and also they needed artistic direction. And so I started working there and trying to bridge the contemporary with the traditional. And so my body of work at Nubulinga comes in two different categories. The first one is more towards that bridge of contemporary and traditional through the use of traditional techniques and mediums, and working with more high-end products, materials such as wood and silks. And then, so I'm gonna just pull up, I can screen share. So I'm just gonna pull up some examples. Okay. So yeah, this is the kind of, can everyone see? Okay, so this is the kind of trend and traditional that I did. Like, we use these traditional techniques in wood and applique. And so those are the more traditional parts that I started working with, and also incorporated screen printing with these kind of elements. Yeah, so then I also did graphic art for Nubulinga. That was like, I introduced screen printing, and then that was really something that I loved because I could combine graphics with on more contemporary silhouettes that were for like a more young audience. And so that was really fun because I could work on my graphics. And then I was also responsible for Nubulinga's interiors. So I was working on the shop and the cafe and the guest house. So if I was better at this working this, I could have shown little images as I went by. But so this gave me a lot of experience. And then I started working, and the guest house had 16 different themes. And in 2011, I created all the different themes and designed all the work in-house. We produced it in-house. I created it. And then I came across this special technique called Kyungbu, which is a way of creating relief on traditional furniture. And that was really kind of inspiring. It hadn't been used outside of traditional furniture, and I really wanted to use it for my artwork. And so soon after that, I traveled to Tibet to visit my sister in Amdo, Tibet for the first time, and just like seeing the people there, it was this mix of their traditional wear, a fusion of traditional wear with contemporary clothing. And it was like very interesting to me. So I wanted to capture that. And I created this series called The Roof of the World, where I painted a few different people with and incorporated my Kyungbu technique. So I can't pull up the images. So it's a shame. But then after that, yeah, I got married, I had a son, and my husband is also in the design. Well, so he has his own little shop and workshop, and he creates, produces, and sells clothing and accessories. So I started working with him also, and his working with graphics and pattern prints for him. And so I got really busy with the son and different projects, and I was just doing all that and had very little time for my art for many years. And so then when 2020 happened and the whole world came to a stop, and like everything busy, and suddenly everything stopped, and I was kind of panicked originally because I had to stop all my projects and So then after the initial panic, I started to just work on my own art, and I created a series of 9 digital paintings and decided to exhibit them. And given the time frame, I decided to work in the digital because of all the research and drawing techniques and details that I had to put in. And then at the end of it, I did one that was painted by hand, and I used my traditional Gunbu technique. And so I'm just gonna show, like, I have a lot of work in the background. So I'll just kind of, so those are the different women, and the 9 different women had also, like, it was during COVID times, so they had masks, and Tibet's regional costumes were so different from each other and so elaborate that I just wanted to research my background, especially as someone who grew up in India in exile and had I hadn't had the opportunity to really visit Tibet. And so I created this, so these were the 9 series in celebration of the different Tibetan traditional regional outfits. So yeah, that's it. I couldn't show the images.
Sure. I mean, unfortunately, I don't have any share screen or any technology, and someone fortunately helped me to put my class year up there as well. It's very daunting to be the senior citizen in this gathering, but thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this. And I don't, it's funny, I don't often think of writing as being art. I mean, obviously there are writers who are artists who elevate their writing to a level that I think you could call art, but most of us are hacks, and we sort of churn out a certain number of words a day and hope that somebody will read them. But as I was thinking about my writing and my career as a writer and where it started at Woodstock, it struck me that I had a number of wonderful teachers at Woodstock who were in the English department, who inspired me to read and to write. My mother was a poet, and she was, of course, a very strong influence on me. But Mrs. Unrau, for instance, Ruth Unrau, was a teacher, and there were a number of teachers at Woodstock who encouraged me to write when I was there. But actually, as I think back on it, one of the interesting things is that the lessons I learned at Woodstock that have helped me as a writer later on came primarily from my art teacher, Frank Wesley, who is a wonderful artist. He, was at Woodstock for, I think, about 4 or 5 years. And I was fortunate to study under him. My wife, Amita, and I both were his students. And many of the things that Frank taught us as students are things that have influenced me as a writer and have informed me and inspired me to write. Frank, more than anything, I think he taught me how to observe things carefully. And observation, of course, is something that all artists choose. Observation using all of your 5 senses, of course. But for a writer, observation is absolutely critical. And I remember sitting outside near the quad, trying to draw the deodar trees that were there growing at the edge of the space there. And Frank had a wonderful way of coming up. He didn't hold back criticism. His usual comment was, "What happened?" I remember him coming up and looking at what I was drawing, and then he said, "You haven't actually looked at that tree, because a deodar tree has the branches rise and then fall. I had drawn it, I think, just sort of straight up. And if you look at the branch of a deodar tree, it actually comes and it then droops at the end." And he was able to show me, just in that very simple interaction, that I wasn't looking at that tree carefully enough, and I wasn't observing it in a way that would help me as an artist, as someone who is doing visual arts. And it's something that I learned from him that I've carried over into my writing, is that you have to look at things carefully and you have to look at them over time. And I think Frank also taught us something that is absolutely vital, I think, for every artist, is the discipline of our craft, the discipline of our work. And he would tell us about when he went to Japan and studied painting there. And one of his teachers, for 6 months, I think, made him paint a stick of bamboo again and again and again and again, until he had actually mastered that image and had been able to convey that image effectively, truly, and completely in that way. And I think that that's something that I learned from Frank very early on at Woodstock. He was also, the other interesting thing about him as a painter, some of you may be familiar with his work and others may not. Some of Frank's work was, or the bulk of Frank's work was focused on representing Christian themes in his paintings. And so he would draw a Madonna that was a very Indian setting, an Indian face, an Indian context in that way. And he was able to take biblical references and put them in an Indian context. And in that process, there was a huge amount of storytelling that went on. And I think that's one of the things that when I think back to those years when I was studying with him, Frank's ability to tell a story through his paintings was very effective, very meaningful for me. And I remember one of his paintings was of the Good Samaritan, and he set that painting in Tibet. He had trekked up into Tibet towards Kailash. And so this painting of the Good Samaritan is there on a very desolate pass into Tibet. And he would tell us about how he undertook that trek, what he experienced, all of the sort of isolation and sort of adventure of that trip as well. And that came through in his painting. And I think there's the idea of storytelling, both visually as well as in an oral narrative, was something that I picked up from him as well. The last thing I'd mention is that he taught us a technique of watercolor painting, which I think he called the Lucknow wash technique, was where you soak the piece of paper, then you taped it to a board, and then over that you washed it with color. And often that color went from dark to light or light to dark. And then one painting that he had us do was of an egret by moonlight. So what happened was you colored in that space, and then you picked out the areas that were white using a brush with just water. So in a sense, you were erasing the color as you created this painting. And as I think back on that, one of the things that is something that I've learned over the years in the process of revising my own writing, as I do draft upon draft upon draft of a story or a book, is that what you take out of that is as important as what you put in. So in a sense, we were creating that moon by removing the color from it. We were creating that egret by removing the color from it. And as I'm writing, writing a passage that's descriptive, for instance, I think of that, and I think of the efficiency of language, the way in which you can remove a sentence, you can remove a word, you might even remove a paragraph. And then at the end of it, what you're left with is something that is communicates whatever it is you want to do and tells the story that you want to do. And that's something that Frank taught us at Woodstock. So I'll leave you with that idea. I'll leave you with that thought. But thank you again for including me here.
Thank you, Mr. Alter. I think we move on to Shruti from the class of 2000.
Okay. Well, Sonam and I are in the same class. It's really nice to also be to see her and to see all of you. And I loved, Stephen, what you said about the habit of observation. And I'm a filmmaker, so using the medium of course, writing, but then also deciding what is on screen is a big part of that. I'm actually currently in India right now. I just got here a few days ago, and I've been in various villages, and I was in like UP, Gujarat, and Rajasthan over the course of 3 days, directing something for a foundation. And I'm currently in Mumbai, and I realize my hotel room is incredibly dark. So forgive me, I didn't control this lighting for a filmmaker. But again, like Sonam was saying, it's really hard to talk about one's work without showing it. So I figure I could show 2 things more recently that I've made that I would say in a way, like my time at Woodstock, I could really recognize as an influence. So I'm going to go ahead right now and share a film that just came out last week. So here we go. It's a few minutes long. And I'll talk about it right after this. Okay, while you're opening it, what I will say is in the past year during COVID, I've been in Norway. I've worked in the US for a long time, lived there for, I guess, like 21 years now, ever since I graduated. And I married a Norwegian, and I conveniently got stuck there during COVID. And, a year and a half ago, from not speaking any Norwegian or working in Norway, I found myself, I think being thrown into a new culture. So I don't want to keep everyone here for like 2 hours, and be mindful of that. So when you do have a chance, do watch the film on your own time. It's a private link, so please don't share it. It was only meant to be for today's viewing purposes. But essentially, I'd say, one of the things I guess one's learned from being at Woodstock was completely being thrown into a new culture and being able to adopt and listen and craft one's own. And so essentially a year and a half ago when COVID happened, I found myself in a brand new one. And within a year and a half, ended up getting to direct the opening film of the Munch Museum, which Edvard Munch, who's one of Norway's most famous artists, who's known as the creator of the Scream, he, around the time when the Nazis took over Norway, he decided, because they were getting rid of a lot of art and artwork, he donated all of his artwork to the city of Oslo. So the city of Oslo then built the Munch Museum essentially as a showcase of his work. And now the new Munch Museum, which has been like a big undertaking, just opened in the city. And so being a non-Norwegian, and at the time, a year and a half ago, non-Norwegian speaker, I would say it was kind of strange and wonderful opportunity to get to direct the film for them. And I would say the kind of internationalism and multiculturalism that Woodstock has been, I would say, a reason why one can suddenly be thrown into a new culture and get to work in a different language, in this medium, and to kind of make something for an institution when you're not even from that place. So I would say that's been an incredible tool. And to Stephen's point, this amazing ability of like learning observation, not just in terms of like specific art form, but listening to new cultures and respecting them and showcasing them, in a way that's respectful. So that's something that I would say I've learned. And without further ado, I think I can send this baton on, and I'm incredibly grateful. And next time we can actually watch more things. So on to the next. Thank you.
Hi everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me for this, and it's always awesome to connect with people from Woodstock across domains and across like eras and stuff. This is always a super interesting time. I hope I'm not the youngest over here because I'm typically I'm typically the oldest in the group that I work with. So this is a new space for me. But my name is Rag Sethi. I'm from the class of 2009, graduated 2009. Tenacious was the name of my class, and my work revolves around production of music essentially. So I have a studio here in Ahmedabad. So I live in Ahmedabad in Gujarat. So I have a studio over here called the Compass Box Studio, which I started about 3 years ago. And I started this studio with the intention of producing and promoting independent talent coming from this country. For anybody who knows music in India, Bollywood music is this mammoth force that needs to be reckoned with as far as independent musicians are concerned. I'll leave some of the links in the chat later, so you guys can check out the website and YouTube channel as well. So the idea was to support independent music. And what does that mean? Essentially, that means like non-film music. 80%, 95% of all music consumed in India comes from film music for the most part. So the idea of having bands and singer-songwriters releasing independent music that is not tied directly to a film is still relatively new. So I wanted to create the space purely as a platform to support indie music. So I started the studio about 3 years ago, and I'll share the website and some of the work that I've been doing, and a short video if the tech sort of works out. I've had the opportunity to work with A.R. Rahman with an independent release. My studio has been listed on the top 10 studios in India for independent music and musicians in the country. And what we essentially do is we find talent from across the country, and we give them my studio as a platform where they can come to record their songs in one take, completely live, and we put it up online. And we do this completely free of cost for the artist, because the whole process and costing when it comes to music production is immense. So for a lot of people who are toying with the idea of wanting to be a musician, and then when they go to a studio and then they find out how expensive it is to actually produce a song, they get, there's no incentive for them to spend that much amount of money on producing a song when they're not really sure of whether or not they want to be a musician, or they're just trying this out for fun. So we came in as a platform to bridge that gap for a lot of musicians, that if you have a great composition and if you have a great song, money should not be a limitation to getting that song produced and out there in the world. So I'll just quickly share the website that we have, and then a short video after that. Let's see if this works. Can you guys see this? Yeah. So the motto of our studio is called part studio, part label, but wholly indie. And the reason we function as a label as well is because we help artists, release music from conception of the song to like getting it up on Apple Music and Spotify. So we're like a one-stop shop for musicians to come and get their work done. Some of the places where we've been featured, so we've been featured on Red Bull Music. They called us as like one of the most important platforms for independent music in Gujarat, which is super cool. I'm just going to try to move this aside. We've also been featured on Rolling Stone India for the work that we've been putting out. Rock Street Journal, which is another independent music publication in India. Like I said, we got selected on the top 10 studios in India for independent musicians. So it's been 3 very hectic years to produce as much work as possible. And I'd like to just share a short video. Just let me know if you guys can hear the audio coming out of this. Just going to play a little bit and just let me know.
We've come so far. to catch the wind. I know you will echo my boat. When I'm sinking to my wreck, you come and dig me out. Please dig me out. You make me. Falling shadows into the light, I never really know where they go. Safety isn't.
Let me just stop the share. So that's essentially a small snippet of the work that we do. We're not we're genre agnostic. If it's a good song, it doesn't matter what the language is. We've done a Tamil live session, we've done a Gujarati live session. If it's a good song and it's good music, it should have the opportunity to be fully produced. So the space that you saw in the video is my studio, and what typically happens is that an artist will send some work to me. I'll arrange it, call the right people for the session, and we'll all do this in one take. We'll just record the entire thing in one take and put it up as a video. And the whole music bug initially came to me during my time when I was at Woodstock. So after Woodstock, when I went to study in a university called Chapman University in California. And I was really afraid to major in music because it just seemed too threatening to me at the point. So I majored in integrated educational studies, and I left music as like this side hobby. When in Woodstock, it was the first time I was exposed to like music from like a band setting. I remember the jazz band, and like jazz jam was something that we all look forward to every single year. And every time these musicians would play, I would always feel like, oh man, I want to join that band. So senior year, there was a spot for a bassist, and I didn't play bass back then, but there was a spot for a bassist open. So I went to the director and I said, please, I really want to audition. And I'm so happy that Mr. Hug was there to like include me into the jazz band. And that was my first introduction to like playing music with people, which is something that I knew I definitely wanted to do if I started a music career. So when I started the studio, I made a very strong objective for myself that if I'm making music, it should be a collaborative process. Because when I was in the jazz band in Woodstock, everybody has their own individual parts, but it needs to come together. Everybody needs to know each other's parts in the song. So that process really like stuck with me. And when I started the studio and when I started producing these videos, these live sessions, I wanted to keep that spirit of what inspired me in the first place alive. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my story. We're still producing these live sessions. We try to produce 2 videos a month. We're looking for sponsorship as well, because after COVID, it was difficult for musicians to travel down to Ahmedabad to come and record in my studio. So we're currently, looking for people to support the work that we're doing, because we do this completely free for the artist. It's a platform. So, if any of you know somebody who would like to support an endeavor like this and stuff, I mean, I would love to connect with you and, try to take this forward. So yeah, that's kind of been my journey. I'll link the website as well as the YouTube channel that we have on the chat. So you guys can check it out later if you liked what you heard. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Rod. That is amazing. Exactly what we want in this group, I think. Even getting that diversity from not only thinking about fine arts and that side, but the entire creative community. So I have a little presentation. I'm going to be sharing some slides. I'm Isaac Garrigan. I graduated in 2006. Our class was called Intrepid. And as I was preparing and thinking about this presentation, I think the word intrepid, it sort of resonates through my, I think there's I can reflect at my work even through that word. We require a certain fearlessness to do art, and especially as we think of experimentation and playfulness in art, I think this fearlessness is something that is required or is part of the process of creating. The studio or space of making has been such a space for me, cross between a lab and a playground, where there's rules and systems, but at the same time, it's a space where spontaneity can happen. So this is a space that I thrive in, and something I think even at Woodstock, being in different places, being in the academic setting, but also in the nature, in dorms with friends, these spaces of developing expression to thinking about things, it kind of comes through in the spaces of work now. My work, it's fairly widespread. It's not very specific, but more recently, I've been examining, sort of looking at. It's been an attempt, at least, to look at space, history, memory, movement, language, and identity, community, and social art practices vis-a-vis the arts. I grew up in Woodstock, first joining in second grade in 1996, and growing up in the community and in the hills, of course, while it was in retrospect really amazing, it was definitely not easy when I was a kid and missing home and all of that. But some of the challenges that were there earlier on in life, I think that has helped to give me this inner core strength. Along with that, I think the very special, truly diverse community helped create connections between who I identify as and the definition and ideas around the third culture kid. I think that has played out in various ways in life, in relationships, and even in my art practice now. I got married earlier this year. Talking about relationships, I got married earlier this year to a classmate of mine in Woodstock, and she's also creative. So yeah, it plays out. I think even in the coming 10, it will play out in different ways. The Woodstock connection. Beginnings. I'm just gonna share my screen and show you some of my work. I'm gonna go fairly quickly through the slides. I have a number of it, but as I was speaking about sort of language and sort of that fearlessness, experimentation, playfulness, these are in that realm of sort of work. Beginnings of my interest in art developed with Mr. Dimitro. He was my art teacher in high school. Soon after that, in college in Pennsylvania, I moved from a representation sort of academic style to more abstract work. And then after that, I'd moved to Vancouver at Emily Carr, and this abstraction sort of showed through some of the design, industrial design, and even through some of the fine art work that I was doing. It was one ceramic class that shifted me from more design space to the fine arts. And I enjoyed painting, photography, ceramic sculpture, and printmaking. And I think these form the sort of core of my art and art thinking and practice. In 2013, I moved back to my hometown of Leh Ladakh in the very northernmost part of India. And here I was coming to a community that there's very little contemporary art. So there's a little bit of thinking about what I'm doing, how do I engage the community. And it was by very serendipitous events that I joined the Ladakh Arts and Media Organization, co-founded by another Woodstock alum, Manisha Ahmed, class of 1984. So I was there for a number of years, and during this time I gravitated towards the vast Himalayan visual heritage that we have, and like Sonam, also trying to create meaningful bridges from this heritage that we have to more contemporary means of expression. So this was looking at that universal principle of design, of the biophilia effect, but at the same time incorporating some of the Thanka flora patterns. And a version of this was done for a hospital here. And that was looking at humanizing a hospital space. In 2000, sorry, that was the only picture of me with the paintings. So to give reference to size, in 2018, I was awarded a residency with Art for Change in New Delhi. And at that time, we were looking at the simplicity of being. It was a really great event because a number of things happened. I met, some of you may know Mr. Harnish, who was Woodstock art teacher in the 90s. And with a number of conversations with him, he helped align many of my art considerations. There I also met with Stefan and Josh, who were present in this call, and it was a very good meet, and also a break away from what I was doing in Ladakh, and I was able to explore these works. These are again works. This is language. So I'm writing. I'm sitting in the center of this painting and writing around myself, layer on layer with different colors, writing thoughts, memories that come to mind, and then exploring language also, the different languages I know, and layering them like that. And this cushion, the black space that you see there, that's the cushion that I was sitting on. That was Mr. Hanish's idea. He was like, you were sitting on that cushion, why don't you stick that on the painting? So I ended up doing that, and of course this was stretched and then displayed on the wall. And that's another one. And some of my ceramic work, this was looking at the canoe movement. This was done in Vancouver. And then the inside of it is painted with glaze. So ceramic and painting kind of came together. There's some hand built and with molds.
Hey Isaac, could you go back to
Yes.
3-4 quickly? That was you quickly skipped that one.
Which one? This one or this one?
Or the one before the ceramics.
This one?
That one. Oh man, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this was in that same line of layering with words and sentences, thoughts. I did a number of series in this direction. Ceramics was really fun. I wasn't able to make nice pots, even pots, so the wobbly pots kind of became something I could use. There was that sort of resourcefulness. And then in Ladakh, I was also exploring some of the Thanka paintings, and I did a collaboration with a Thanka painter. This is one from the series, looking at motifs from Thanka, looking at the space, and one of also was interested in design, furniture. I think this, for some reason or the other, I couldn't exactly point out right now, but has, I feel like this is very connected to my time at Woodstock. Maybe it's the wood element of it, but yeah, it has something Woodstock-esque about it. This is the heritage space in Ladakh, started by Manisha Ahmed, co-founded by Manisha Ahmed. This was a studio, a really amazing space, a 16th century building converted to an art space. So I was able to work here for a number of years. In 2019, I was invited to help give leadership to Art for Change. And since then, I've been in New Delhi. Art for Change is an organization based out of New Delhi. And for the last 13 years, it has looked at how art and beauty and truth can shape society. So this is primarily done through the key program, which is the International Artist Residency, where 7 international artists and 7 national artists are brought together for 2 weeks. And theme is unpacked under the guidance of a mentor. And we're looking at different communities around Delhi, engaging in different themes over the years. It started off with more artivism, art and activism, but through the years we've sort of expanded our themes and looked at different spaces of consideration. Our most recent theme is looking at what do we do with difference, and what do we do with difference and art and artists as a bridge in a fragmented world where differences are a cause for divisions. Where can art and artists bring healing, unity, peace, and a better way forward? What excites me about these programs is how we explore the role of the artist and art in society. So these are just some pictures from the events. These are our group discussions that we have. I think so much of how we have these discussions, how we sit together, form friendships and relationships goes back to our experiences in Woodstock. And amazingly, Art for Change major, at least what 70–80% of our leadership has direct or indirect ties to Woodstock. This is a critique that we had. Some of you may know Elizabeth Braid. She was a class of 2000, Ashwin's class, I think 2007. So she took part last year as well. We have another photo of, there's Mr. Hanish with all the other artists, and then this was a fun photo that we took. Another exciting thing we are working on right now is art centers that we're considering in the Dehradun Rajpur area. We've just started our capital campaign for it, but we're really excited for this because it brings us closer to the hills. And once it's ready, we'd be most happy to have many of you visit us there. So that much from now. Next, I think we have Ashwin Chako, class of 2007. Based in Ireland, illustrator. So over to you, Ashwin.
Thanks, Isaac. I will share my screen as well. Can you all see that? Good. Hey everybody, my name is Ashwin Chako, and I'm a positively playful visual storyteller. And I use the medium of illustration and design to tell those stories. For me, art and drawing is something I've always loved. I've been doing it as far back as I can remember. I particularly remember the story of me at the age of 5 or 6 asking my mother if I could make drawing a living. And it was a long and winding road of lots of different careers within the creative industry until now, 26 years later, 2 countries and 3 kids later, that I can proudly say that I draw for a living. So how does that manifest? I work in the sphere of advertising, and these are just some of the clients that I've worked with across the years, primarily as an illustrator and designer and graphic art director. So this is one of the campaigns I had the privilege to work on in Dublin, Ireland. So this was all over our city here, and it was to promote Cycle Week so that there's better reduce carbon emissions and push for more cycles within the city. The other thing I do is work with packaging for companies. So creating vivid imagery so that their branding can stand out and really tell the story behind the brand, which is what makes it special and unique. And then I also have my own clothing brand, which is called Chaco Brand, and we do clothes. I used to screen print them prior to the pandemic, but now I use an outsourced system, threadless, to source my materials for me and print them for me. So outside of creating work as an illustrator for commercial clients and brands, I recently, since the pandemic started, a group called Illustrators Unite. And the idea with this is to help educate illustrators on the business of illustration. One of the toughest things I found when I was starting out was I was very artistic and I had the art side down, but I had no idea how to run it as a business. And so I started this series of talks and workshops where I want to work with local community and create a community of illustrators across the world where we can come together, unite, and talk about the business practice of illustration and learn from each other's experiences and insights. And one of my favorite things outside of educating and working with clients is, of course, creating books. So I'm an author, and in 2019, I self-published this book, Keep At It. And it was basically a way for me to give back all the lessons I learned throughout the years working as an independent designer and illustrator. And so this is a book of inspirational quotes and ideas to propel people forward in their artistic journey. Then at the back of 2020, prior to that, I really wanted to create a children's book, but I'd sent it out to lots of different publishers, didn't get any answers, and I'd given up hopes of publishing a book. But with the pandemic and the pause, it created this time for me to analyze what I really want to do with my art practice and what sort of impact I wanted to make. And this is when I realized I could not allow other people to decide the type of work I was allowed to do. And so I created What Wondrous Shapes, a children's book about diversity and the different body shapes that we all have, the different colors that we are, in a way to encourage conversations, a place where parents can dive deep and have these deeper conversations with their kids. So this is one of the spreads from the book. This was one of the projects from this year called The Little Optimist. And again, it was fueled because of the pandemic. I took a very conscious decision to put out positive ideas using social media and the online spaces. There was so much negativity at that time, and I wanted to make a conscious decision to be positive and optimistic. And through that process over the last 2 years, people have been messaging me and asking me, how do you stay positive? And so then I created this book detailing some of the ideas that I use. And the focus of the book is the idea of creative meditation, and it's taken from the Judeo-Christian idea of meditation, where rather than emptying your mind, you take each day and you fill your mind with an idea. And so the book has a little story, and then it leaves you with a thought of the day. And much like the cow regurgitating the cud, you must regurgitate your idea and think through it throughout the day. And so, for instance, this one is embrace your creativity. And so how would you embrace your creativity today? How do you apply that in everyday life? This is a new book that is just being released called A Little Book About Justice. Again, these big themes and emotions are really what draws me and excites me. And I think a big part of that is my own influence from Woodstock. And one of the biggest things that I appreciate about Woodstock was that they taught us to think, not just do because you're told to do, but to think and learn and question. And through that questioning, you get your answer that you're looking for. So another interior spread of that work. So as you all know, we all grew up here in Woodstock, and one of the big influences outside of thinking outside the box was the fact that we were a multinational community. And that essentially meant that we all turned into third culture kids, because and that role of being someone who is distinctly a part of a community, but also lives outside of it, gives or has given me the ability to have perspective. You could turn up in any culture and see where they're coming from and why they're doing the things they do. And this definitely then allows us to ask questions within that culture and then move towards shaping it or inciting change through the work that we create. So how did that happen for me? It's through connection. And you remember one of my first slides was me asking my mom at 5 if I could make drawing a living. When I was about 9 or 10, I met this man, Joshua John. He, I think he would have been 20 at the time. And he was the coolest guy I'd met. He was also a missionary kid, went to Woodstock, and he made art and rode motorbikes. And that for me showed a person who was real. He made the possibility real for me as a little kid. And so that then later on, he then became a mentor for me in my later years. So a big part of Woodstock's effect on me is the community aspect of it. The fact that it teaches you to be able to make mistakes and learn from them. And so by creating this culture of community that uplifts you and gives you the space to experiment and grow, this affects the way I create my art. The other thing that it did was opportunity. So through my connection to Josh in 2005, I actually did the art residency like Isaac did with Stefan in 2006. And at the time, the theme was female feticide. And so it was really interesting as this little high schooler coming up there and interacting with all these amazing artists and seeing how they look at the world and the possibilities and the questions they ask themselves. And so this really, again, reaffirmed the direction that I wanted to take pursuing my work. And like I said, community was the last one. Oh, that's it from me. It was lovely seeing you all. I'm just gonna stop. So let me know if you have any questions throughout that.
Thanks, Ashwin. That's fantastic seeing all your work and hearing about your experiences at Woodstock. We have two more sharings. One is, we'll move to Chris Green from New York, and both the next two presenters are their classmates from the class of 1990. So Chris and then Stefan to end the time of sharing.
Yes, Chris Green, class of 90, the previous century. Can you believe that? Hey, now, I'm not going to have any technical issues. Give me a second. Can you hear me okay? Everybody's cool? Cool, thank you so much. So Chris Green, class of 90, thanks you all for including me again. I presented before and this is kind of a repeat, but it's always a pleasure to talk about work and see what everybody's doing. This has just been, remarkable for me to connect with this broader community. I've been very curious as to who's been active as artists coming from Woodstock. So this is, the beginning of something really wonderful. I went to Woodstock just for my senior year. And of course, it totally changed my life. But one of the things that was really impactful, a really big deal for me, was that the school allowed 2-hour blocks to study art and music. And I also didn't have to choose between visual art and music. So that really instilled two very important things for me and from my practice moving forward. One was that art, like a sport or any skill, you have to practice. It's a practice, whether you're in the mood to do it or not. And that's something I think about now after being a professional artist for 25 years. It's like there are days where you're just not in the mood to do this stuff, but it's part of the the world that we move and operate in is that it has to come from the body, and it has to revolve around practice. So those 2-hour blocks were like, got to do it. It's every day. And the other was because I didn't have to choose between music and visual art. It really set the stage for me to understand what it's like to work across media. So, and I consider myself a multimedia artist. These are just 2 paintings I did while I was at Woodstock. The one on the left is, I think, my attempt at illustrating a story. And the one on the right is my attempt to marry surrealism and cubism. I was very interested in the isms of the time. So moving forward, I didn't study art in college at all. I studied religion instead. But after college, I discovered a type of performance called visual theater or material theater, which is a type of performance, time-based work that combines aspects of installation, that's on the left, and object manipulation, costumes, video projection, puppetry, live music, in this case, orchestral, and dance. These are all projects that I've done over the past 20 years. Mostly here in New York City. In 2005, my work in theater brought me to installation design. This is Noah's Ark at the Skirball in Los Angeles. It's a permanent interactive installation based on the story of the Great Flood that's told by hundreds of cultures around the world. I was commissioned to design and build the interactives and kinetic animals. This is Hunger is a traveling multimedia installation that toured the United States twice. Visitors enter a triple wide expanding trailer and sit at a table like dinner guests to experience personal stories from a diverse group of Americans who are all struggling with hunger or food insecurity. I was commissioned for this project to art direct the trailer and design the immersive multimedia experience. In 2010, I was generously invited by Mr. Stefan Eicher to be an artist in residence at his Reflections Gallery in Shapurjat, during which time I embarked on several months of what I called experimental research. I was interested in video-based essays and trying to, push past my own ignorance of this country that I love so much. So I just really dug into Delhi, and the result is a project called Mega Delhi, which is an online project now. And this is an excerpt. Let me see if I can. So that project is, it's research, but it's structured around my experience of that research. Excuse me. What I'm doing now currently is I'm developing these half-scale figures, totally different genre, in order to make what I'm calling miniature dance theater pieces and music videos. I have a very long-standing and deep love for dance, modern, postmodern in particular. and the dance community here in New York is really wonderful. So working with choreographers to kind of merge these fields of puppet theater and dance has been an interest of mine. So this is something that I'm working on right now. And that's the summation. I really feel like, I mean, I have a lot of other stuff that I do. I'm also working in music, but this gets us to where I feel like I can hand it off to the next presenter.
Thanks, Chris. Next we have Stefan, who is Stefan Eicher. He's art teacher at Woodstock. Over to you, Stefan.
Great. Well, I'm going to keep this hopefully very short, but there's a reason why I'm right at the end here. I'm speaking on behalf of the art department at Woodstock, and also on behalf of my head of department, Nandu. And the underlying goal here, the hidden agenda, is to give you guys a very physical image of Woodstock and a sort of an update of kind of where we are right now in order to entice you back to Woodstock. And so this is a little intro. This kind of, all of this, as Isaac would have mentioned right at the start of our meeting, came about came out of the virtual reunion held back in August, where we had a panel of artists. And it was interesting that as the participants in that little presentation, the kind of older generations were listening to these artists present. Their feedback, they all talked about this man, and Steve gave us an insightful, a really insightful connection to how this man, Frank Wesley, was so has had such an impact on so many of Woodstockers. So what we walked away from that was this incredible heritage. You know, Frank Wesley and his skill and his ability to influence such a large group of people, but also this excitement, that realization that there's such, over the years, Woodstock has produced so many, there's such a number of alumni who have entered into these creative fields, and this idea that if we could harness this, if we could create this connection, it would not only profoundly affect us and our practice and our ability to be nurtured and encouraged by each other, but also benefit the larger Woodstock community and the student body in particular. So just, you know, this is just looking at this fact that there's I don't even know these folks, but there's a history to, of course, art at Woodstock. This is back in 2014. I got this off of the web, but you know, 7th grade, having an official exhibition with drinks, with beverages and a live band. I'm sure some of you can tell me who the art teacher is with the white hair there. Margaret, thank you, Margaret. And but in that's kind of, we've come a long way, and and this is kind of where we're at now, right? So this is Woodstock. This is what it's looked like for the last 2 years, empty. And we are, as of 2 weeks, our students are returning. And this is evidence. This photo was taken yesterday. This is Nandu modeling for 2 of his 11th grade students out near the quad. And let me just give a little kind of a reminder of the physical spaces. Okay, this is I'm building an architecture for you, a visual architecture for you to be able to enter in at some point in the future. But the media center, most of us are probably familiar with this. Top floor is Nandu's classroom, and it used to be full of students. There's this is the view out onto the bazaar. And Nandu in his corner office, I think the best office on campus. There's a sculpture room, which also is typically full of people. We're hoping to fill it up again. And the bottom floor is another classroom, which has seen a lot of footfall over the years. So, you know, there's some of the facilities, of course, where the art department covers all media, and we have a little kiln out the back. And exhibition space. This is the newly renovated main hallway. Some of you may not recognize this, but a lot of the bulletin boards were taken down to create space, a gallery space that can have ongoing exhibitions. And then another exhibition space is down in the what's called the Lions Lounge, down near the quad, and which has also been used for some wonderful exhibitions over recent years. The programs at Woodstock currently is, as you are familiar, we've launched the IB. So there's the MYP, the middle years program, ranging from 6th to 10th grade, and then the DP, the diploma program, 11th and 12th. And so very briefly, the diploma program is very exciting. It's I understand it as kind of this mini graduate degree that you take, where you start off with your first year, 11th grade, get a range of exposure to different media. These are some of the students from last year, some of the works they produced. And then over the course of 2 years, you come up with your own basic body of work and in your own conceptual framework for a body of work that's also art historically contextualized. And you end up with a sort of like a thesis exhibition at the end of your 12th grade. Maya, she was a scholar of peace, came out of Yemen. And so this is her work last year, very much a response to her experience of the whole situation there. There's a lot more to that. It was way too brief. But in addition to our regular academic program, we bring in visiting artists every semester. And of course, we've been doing it virtually now, but this was back pre-COVID. This was on particular visiting artists in collaboration with the Center for Imagination, Mr. Mark Hallett, who is a paleontologist and an artist. He coined the term paleo art. So he worked with Steven Spielberg on designing the dinosaurs for Jurassic Park. So it was really fun having him in class and incorporating him in the actual teaching of our classes. We've also had folk artists come, craft, so Dokla art. So we had Dokla art. Nandu has organized Dokla art workshops where kids are actually making stuff like this. This is not made by a student, by the way. It was off the web. We didn't have any imagery. But we've also tried an actual student residency where we invited young professional artists to work alongside student artists. So this was one we did on the topic of the mountains, and the task being to spend a week just listening to the mountain and hearing what it tells us about what it means to be human. So just taking the students and the young professional artists out, and these are young professional artists on the other side of art school, when it was the idea of giving them students a chance to interact with folks in whose place they could end up in a year or two, and then end with an exhibition there. Where we're at right now, you can see the school is going through a lot of renovation, and Dr. Craig has been quite supportive of the idea of public art and having more of it. Of course, we have the peace, the famous peace sculpture here, but and some of you might recognize this from years past. This was actually crumbling and going to be thrown out, and Nandu sort of renovated it, brought it back to life. So there's a little bit of public art already around. This is by Nandu actually sculpted these out of the old lyre tree. When that fell, we saved, the school saved some of the trunk, and Nandu turned that into these sculptures. But there's a lot of potential, and this is the brand new space next to the quad. There's on the left here is a brand new cafe, and there's a wall on the at the other end. And this is there's plans for a multimedia mural there. And now, of course, you are familiar with the CFI and the tragedy of what happened over this last monsoon. And this is what it looks like. This is, again, was a photo taken yesterday. And it's what one of the ways that one way we've kind of made sense of this is that, hey, if this was to happen to any building, it's great that it happened to the CFI, because what it's left us with is a massive canvas. And so we're in conversation, the art department and CFI, we're in conversation about what to do with this incredible opportunity, and to turn this space, this concrete surface that was built to stabilize the hillside, but to turn it into some sort of a community art piece, perhaps putting up climbing routes for rock climbing, and then incorporating some sort of massive visual, tossing. Some ideas are just tossing paint off the edge, or filling balloons with paint, and kind of like in a tradition of Holi, tossing it on there in a very abstract expressionist tradition, or possibly rolling down sheets of lengths of cloth and turning it into a projection site for digital projections at night, and or working with local a local community of women to stitch patterns on the other side. So there's just so much possibility here that comes out of tragedy. And so in some ways, really a metaphor for what's kind of happened, not just at Woodstock, of course, globally with the pandemic, but thinking about how can we, what are the opportunities that come out of these difficulties, these difficult times. A collaboration with CFI that was launched today is as we have the 11th and 12th graders coming back next week, an email was sent out, and with the request to pick up a stone from where you're at. And it could just be a stone that represents something about the place you're from, or a stone that makes you think of, or that is in some way gives meaning to these last 2 years of difficulty, and to have students come back and then to kind of process those stories, and then corporately we will then work on some installation art and put up some public pieces as a way for both to create public art, but also as the student body starts to return, to have them make sense of these last 2 years through an art project. And that's with the collaboration. This is Jamie Williams' idea, the head of the Center for Imagination. So I'll end it here, but our agenda was to say, hey guys, let's please reconnect, all right? And the possibilities are, the sky's the limit. Some simple practical thoughts, like baby steps or first steps would be, hey, we want to continue having art talks, visiting artists, and why don't you guys come into our classrooms virtually? There's a whole idea of the career mentoring and networking, and and sharing your incredible experience and learning as you've stepped out of Woodstock and gone the pathways that we've heard even in this last hour and a half. And then lastly, just a really, really concrete possibility to put into your minds is that we are hoping in May 2022, towards perhaps the beginning of May, to hold an actual in-person residency where maybe, I don't know, 6 to 10 of alums can come back to the campus and spend time just really making art on campus, and of course plugging into the academic life of the school as well, as a means both to like in a very physical relational way to get you connected to Woodstock and get Woodstock connected to the world. And something I was going to mention just in closing is that the exciting thing about IB is that it's all about giving students context and creating these real world connections to what's out there. And so I think we really see the potential that this affinity group can play in making that a reality. In addition to just wanting to connect to you all and get you back to where some of this started for a lot of you. All right, thanks so much.
Thank you, Stefan. Amazing stuff. And then there's a lot of feedback on the chat as well. We have a couple of minutes now for discussion. Any questions you might have had for the artists, presenters, any questions or comments or feedback. And also if Dr. Cook, the principal of Woodstock, if you'd like to have a moment to share some thoughts, we can have that and then go into a discussion with the larger group. We'll aim to end in a couple of minutes, but of course, there's no hard and fast time we're ending. Dr. Cook, if
yeah, sure thing, Isaac. Thank you so much, and thanks for bringing everybody together like this. It's just fantastic, and these last almost 2 hours have been so inspiring to all of us. And I know just to hear what you're creating out there, all of you as alum, is just makes me want to go create something now. And so you're all doing your job, inspiring us. Thanks to Stefan and Nandu and our art department for also supporting all of this. I think in a post-pandemic world at Woodstock too, there's never been a more important time to feature art. And as Stefan said, we've been able to renovate so much of our space, an outdoor space as well. And we really want to venture into making sure we are displaying art all over our campus in the the disparate spaces that is the hillside of Missouri and the Woodstock campus. I think, again, it's been mentioned by some of you, as Stefan just said, it's important to give students context. Art helps us see ourselves, to see our lives and what they mean. And you all are living that out day by day in your professions. And so I just want to say thank you. We are doing all we can to keep the legacy of the arts alive at Woodstock. And I just want you to hear that from me. So thank you. It's great to be together with you all.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. So one of the things is we do want to continue keeping in touch with everybody, and we're building on that database. We have, as I shared earlier, we have about 60 plus artists, and I'm sure each of you know more people who are in the creative field. So going forward, we're looking at monthly Zoom meetings. That's one of the things. So that will help us, send out updates, reach out to you if you'd like to share, create those opportunities. So please, I think we have everybody's email or a way to get in touch, right?
Yeah, of course. Like we already have a contact list ready, and everybody who's out here, we have your email addresses so we can keep in touch. But like Isaac said, just spread the word. We want this group to keep growing. Stefan has put in a very nice way presented where Woodstock stands right now. And one of the core, like Isaac has already mentioned this, one of the reasons this core group exists, or this group exists, is to make sure that there are opportunities within this community as well, and that's being shared. Yeah, so please spread the word, get them connected to the alumni office. We'll keep the database, and we'll keep you connected.
Awesome. I don't see any questions in the chat, but I had a suggestion. If we do a group photo, we can do a screenshot if everybody puts on their cameras. And
oh, there is someone.
Is there?
Yeah.
Hi, I
Hi.
am Hyunjin Cho from the class of 2019. So I've seen you guys like a few years back, a lot of you, and it's so nice to like see you guys again. I just had a quick question. Like I came in really late, so you guys talked about the art residency in 2022. So I was just a little bit curious about that, like how we could apply for it, and because I would love to visit Missouri again and stay there for a while, although I just graduated a few years back.
Stefan, would you be able to?
Stefan, if you could
Stefan
just share.
and Mr. Nandu.
Yeah.
Guys, so sorry, my laptop the battery just died. I have heard that question, but was the question about how to go about applying for a residency? Was that correct?
Right.
Right.
You said there's going to be an art residency at Woodstock in 2022.
Oh, yeah, and that's, this is it'll all be shared. I think it's like just the beginnings of the idea of what the possibilities are, and we'll be particularly through the Artist Affinity Group here, we'll be sending out communication about that, and yeah, so those details are forthcoming.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Just to say that I think that it's this platform here that really is the key to information and connection and possibilities. So please stay connected.
Yes, I will.
I just want to add, I'm Sharon, and was helping to organize the idea of affinity groups. I know there's people on here that I don't think we're in touch with. And so maybe we can just be very, real clear about how we can join this group. So there's a WhatsApp group that kind of helps keep people aware of what's going on, and you can join that. And then also, if you send Adi your contact information, say you want to be added to that mailing list, we'll make sure that we get you on that mailing list, or add anybody else as well. But if, email's great, Instagram, however else, but current email is probably the best way.
And Sonam, how can we see your work? Will you be able to share a website with us? Your audio.
Oh, I do have a website. I will share it in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question of any of the artists who would like to respond, please. I've just finished taking a Zoom course on the marvels of mathematics, and I wonder if any of the artists would care to comment from an artistic perspective about the significance of math. When I was at Woodstock many, many years ago, I used to think I was pretty good in math. And, I never really thought of math as being so relevant to artists. And I see Ashwin smiling away, and other artists as well. I wonder if you'd care to make a comment.
Well, I have no affinity to math. It's like, it's always been the death of me. So I don't think I can relate maths to art. I suppose there are principles of it in design that I would use, like, for instance, I think it's the Fibonacci, not I forget the name of the principle, but basically it's concentric circles that go down that is used in design. And it's a mathematical formula. It's seen in seashells, it's seen in plants. I thought it was Fibonacci, but I wasn't sure. So,
Fibonacci.
yeah.
Thank you, Ashwin.
Yeah, no
Oh,
worries.
that's fabulous.
Some of us, some have to leave now. So before we have to leave, I missed one thing, and I apologize. We were meant to go through the entire group, and everybody was going to say their name and what class they were from. Hopefully, we'll have those opportunities in coming sessions. But before some of us have to leave, if we can take that group picture. So for that, if you could please put your cameras on and your smiles on, and we'll take perhaps a couple of us could take screenshots and.
Wait till I get my camera.
Sure.
This is my birthday picture, everybody.
Happy birthday, Helen.
Happy birthday, Helen.
It's actually tomorrow, believe it or not.
All right, I think we're almost all ready. All right, Addy, are you taking or today? Okay, awesome.
Nobody ever celebrated my Halloween birthday when I was little.
I think I have a couple of good photos from here.
Super.
Well done.
Helen, we'll cut a pumpkin at Oakville for you.
Oh, wonderful, Steve. Oh, I'll pass that word around.
Thank you to all the artists.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much,
Thank
everybody.
you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. It was
Thank you
great.
so much.
Take care. Bye for now.
Bye.
Till next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.